In this tutorial, we will talk about async and await and how it works in JavaScript. So let's create some functions here. So I will create function, top level function, and then I'll create another function, sub level function, and then I will create another function, get value. And from this top level function, I will call this sub level function. And from this sub level function, I will call this get value function. And from this main function, from this main script, I will call this top level function. So we have created a simple layout here, and let's return a promise from this get value function. So new return new promise function, resolve reject, and I'm just resolving this promise with a value of 1. Okay, now nothing is getting printed here because we don't have any console.log statements, and I would need to invoke then operation here. Now if you haven't watched my video on promises, or if you don't know how promises work, I would recommend you watch that video first before you come and watch this video. So from this, then I'm going to invoke console.log result. So now we have seen that we are invoking top level function, and from this top level function we are invoking sub level function, and from this sub level function we are calling this get value, and it returns a promise, so we are invoking then here. Now if I want to capture any errors or any promise rejections, I would need to give this catch statement here. We would come to async and await in a bit, but first I want to make sure that we create a simple program without async and await, and then we will implement async and await in that sample program. So here I am capturing console.log error and then result. Okay, and then if I reject this, it would say error 1. So we have written a simple program now without async and await, and let's see how async and await works. So async is a keyword that can be applied on a function. So if I write async here, that would mean that this function will return a promise. Here we are explicitly returning a promise, but in case if I directly return a value like 1, it would mean that this function is returning a resolved promise. So that's why it's going into this then block. Now we have seen async here. So again, I would rephrase: async keyword can only be applied on functions, and that function would return a promise. If you do not explicitly return a promise and directly return a value like we have returned here at line number 15, we are returning 1 here, async function would automatically wrap this value 1 inside a resolved promise. Now let's see how await works. Now await is another keyword that can only be used within the async function. So if I write await here, it won't work because the function has to be async. So I would give this function async, and await simply means that you are waiting for this get value to be returned. So we don't need to do this then and catch here. We can directly do const result, and then I can simply put console.log result. So await here would mean that we are waiting here at line number 6 for this get value function to return the response. Okay, let's see now if I return a promise here, return new promise and function resolve reject, and let's see if I reject this promise, reject. So you would see here that nothing is getting printed, because if we are using this await, we should always wrap this line number 6 inside try and catch. Otherwise, all your lines after this await would not get executed. So even if I write another console.log statement here with hey, I am here, it would not get printed. So the way to fix this is by wrapping this inside try and catch. Then I will wrap this value inside try and catch, and then I will use here error. So here you can see that let me just indent this first. Okay, so here you can see that this get value function is returning a promise, is returning a rejected promise, and it would go inside this catch block, and then all the lines after this try and catch would get executed. So this is a very simple example of async and await. I would rephrase my explanation about await here. So await can only be used inside an async function. And if you are using await, I would recommend this to wrap this inside try and catch, so that if this get value function returns any error, you would be able to capture it. So do not forget to use try and catch with this await function. Now let's see one more example here. So I would create one function here, main function, and then this would return a value of 1. And then I would call this function and store it in a result constant. So result main function, and then I would do console.log result. So now we have a main function. This main function returns a value of 1, and I'm just printing this result on the console. Now what if I want to make this function async? So I would type async here, and this would mean that this line number 2 returning 1 would be wrapped inside a promise, and this function is basically returning a resolved promise. Now you can see here that this line number 6 is printing a promise. It's not printing the actual value here. So there are two ways to make this work. The first way is by using then. So since this return a promise, I can simply do console.log inside this then. So console.log result. So that's the first way of doing it. The second way is by using await. Const result is equal to await main function, and I would do console.log result. So here we cannot use await because await can only be used inside asynchronous functions. So await cannot be used at the top level in your script. If you really want to use it, the way to do it is by wrapping this await inside an anonymous async. So this is the second way of making this code work. So here is the summary of it. I would recommend you all to practice async, await, and promises so that you completely understand these concepts and are really comfortable with it.